It's ridiculous, I'm sure.
Well, welcome in, everybody. We were just discussing the heat here in the Northeast. Although, Joe, technically, I tell them that Maryland is a southern state, but, I get looked at, as you could imagine, with, like I got two heads here. So Maryland just kind of in the middle, but it is hot as we prepare to watch the USA play tonight at 9 o'clock in the world's football. But we're going to discuss a little college football, which is surprisingly right around the corner, man. So welcome in, Joe. Just intro yourself, I guess, and let people know where they could find you.
Yeah, so Joe Lisi, part of formerly of Sports Grid, college football and NFL analyst. You could hit me up on Twitter at GoForThe2. Appreciate the time, Marco. I mean, I know we've talked on X a lot about, college football, less than 100 days away. For me, this is the long off season, right? I don't follow the World Cup or NBA. I'll watch it, obviously, because it's the flavor of the day, but I'm a diehard college football and NFL guy, and get us to August, week number 1. That's where it's all at.
Well, my birthday is in early August, so I'm very partial to August as well. And Joe, unfortunately, both of us being Italian, our Italians were, as you like to say, oh God, I'm blanking on the word that you like to say. But yeah, they did not make the World Cup, so they're soft. Yeah, they were soft.
They are. They're gutless, Marco.
Gutless, that's right. Gutless,
how is it? And I just so you know, I had no idea. Right, I knew that they were bad. They haven't been performing. And then obviously the World Cup starts. Yesterday and today, obviously. And I asked my former partner, Mike Carver, hey, what about the Italians? He's like, they didn't make it. They suck. So, for being Italian, that's what it's all about. You have to at least, pride and step up for your country. And they didn't do that. But hey, two Italians talking college football. To me, there's nothing better.
I had an Italian on last year in Mark Zinno, so it's nice to have another one on here. But
we'll get right in. Great. Work with Zinno all the time. A big Atlanta guy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, formerly on Baltimore radio, so that's how we kind of connected here. But appreciate the time, and we'll get kind of, I guess, right into it. And I think I wanted to discuss it, but we're on the time crunch. But I think both you and I can agree, like many others, the Brendan Sorsby fiasco is just a horrible black eye for the sport of college football. I mean, do you want to touch on that at all, or can we just kind of move on?
Yeah, I mean, if you follow me at all, I mean, I'm a big backer of Joey McGuire and Texas Tech overall as a program, from what they were able to do and transform mediocrity in a doormat, you could say, after Mike Leach moved on to Mississippi State, and what Joey McGuire and that team have done, especially last year, making the college football playoff, is just, it's unbelievable. It's almost as big of a jump to what Kirk Cignetti did at Indiana. And I'm not suggesting 15-0, but you look at the transformation just a couple of years ago. They had the worst pass defense in college football. They take on David Bailey. They spend a bunch of money in NIL. They had one of the best rush defenses in all of college football, and they make the college football playoff. Baron Morton was not up to par. They lose the game to Oregon, and then they have a $5 million kid in Evan Sorsby that they thought would be the quarterback of the future. And it's unfortunate when you look at the circumstances and you just look at it as a whole, being in the gambling space and understanding what took place. It is a black eye, not just to Texas Tech, but college football and college athletics as a whole. He was betting on prop bets. He was betting on his team to be under the passing total. He was, potentially just really ruining everything that we talk about student athletes and athletes gambling on sports. Look at the Hunter Decker situation with Iowa State, right? Iowa State, he was gone, and he never recovered from that. His college and NFL career just done, and you get a black eye in that type of situation. And now you're seeing schools come out and say they don't want to schedule Texas Tech. I don't believe in that, Marco. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, you can't really hold the university hostage, right? I mean, and here's the argument. Well, they went and they appealed it. They should have just, taken the hit and moved on. If you're telling me, right, that if the situation was, let's say, Nick Saban in Alabama, and that situation took place, he wouldn't do whatever it took to get his starting quarterback online, or Michigan with Jim Harbaugh and all of the big, Power 5 schools at the time, or Power 4. That is the problem. So, I mean, everybody loves to be a hypocrite in that type of situation. and it's a win now type of mentality. And Joey Maguire is a really good players coach. He came out this past week and had said that, he understands that Sorsby has a problem, an addiction, and he doesn't believe that he'll be back week 3 or be, earlier. We'll see how that plays out. But again, it's a win now mentality, and teams are doing everything it takes to throw the kitchen sink at a potential title. Now, Sorsby as a player, I'll just say this. I think he's an upgrade from Baron Morton. I really do. He did a lot in Cincinnati with less talent, I think. I think if he was, let's say the gambling situation didn't happen just from a player perspective, I think, he would have been a significant upgrade to where, Baron Morton was last year. Baron Morton, to me, against top flight defenses throughout his career, struggled and was turnover prone. But we'll see how it plays out.
And I know one of us on here had a future on Baron Morton to win the Heisman, correct? Before the season started?
Did I? I don't know. I don't know if I had it on. Did you? Because
no,
I don't know. No.
I remember following one of your posts, and you're like, "All this money's coming in on Baron Morton, and by all of it, I mean mine," or something like that.
Yeah, that was the joke on the show because they know I'm a Texas Tech guy. Like when Joey Maguire, just to give you a background about how we used to do the show, when Joey Maguire was hired, I was a big backer of Joey. He had won me in Texas Tech. Had won, and covered the spread at that time. A couple of years ago, they knocked off Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss in the bowl game. So that's when they had Tyler Shuck. So I was always, they knew me as on the show when we had the show on Sirius as being the Texas Tech guy. So they just assumed when somebody put the money on Baron Morton to win the Heisman that it was me, and I went along with it. No, last year I was all in on some other teams that didn't step up. One of those, Brian Kelly, and obviously LSU, but we can get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, I was a DJ Lagway guy just in case he was good. Newsflash, he was not good. So,
did you see the latest, Marco, on that? Did you see what he came out with yesterday? I don't know. He put out a tweet, or he was talking to a reporter, obviously DJ Lagway of Florida, now at Baylor with Dave Aranda. He had come out and said that he thought he could play better at Florida. He was addicted to Chipotle and fast food and all this stuff. And it affected his play. So we'll see. Again, DJ Lagway, I think from a talent perspective, right? A couple of years ago when he came in the week 1 loss to Miami and Cam Ward, showed the potential of what he could do. Obviously knocked off Lane Kiffin and LSU a couple of years ago in the swamp in back-to-back weeks. But when he's on, he could potentially be as good as any quarterback in the country.
Well, we'll segue then right into that. So I appreciate the lead in there. We'll start with, I guess, coaches kind of on the hot seat here. I mean, obviously we have the usual suspects of last year. Like I thought Loxley, Fickle, Norvell all kind of should have been fired. I think they're the 3 here. And actually last year when I was doing a show like this with Sammy P, I gave him the over-under on 5.5 coaches fired mid-season.
Right.
And we saw that soar over. I mean, there were 3 in a week here. So just want to go over a couple with you here. And you tell me kind of on a 1 to 10 scale, likelihood that they're there, with 10 being they're out, 1 being they're still there. We'll start with Dave Aranda because what people don't realize is Baylor has money. That school, and they're a couple of years from a Big 12 championship game appearance. Sawyer Robertson, I feel like underachieved like as a team last year, but he was very, very good. So is this Aranda's final year if Baylor doesn't go 9-3 or go to the Big 12 championship game?
Yeah, I would believe that. Again, he sort of punched himself out when we talk about pinnacle of success, right? He's similar to Brian Kelly. You beat Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship, with Chapin, right, where it came on in the outduels that team in the goal line stand. You knock off Ole Miss in the bowl game when Matt Corral goes down, and then you regress each and every year. It's the same thing like what Brian Kelly did. He won the SEC West when they had divisions in year 1. He knocks off Nick Saban, and you're waiting for the next, building block, and it just never comes. And I agree with you when you look at that team last year from an offensive perspective. I mean, Sawyer Robertson, go week 1. They play and they battle Jackson Arnold in Auburn, right? I mean, their defense was terrible in that game. And you go to other games, the TCU game.
SMU.
I mean, SMU, go through them all now, and they had talent across the board offensively. Sawyer Robertson, Josh Cameron, that I think could be, get in the NFL a great potential dark horse as a wide receiver, slash running back, that type. But the defense just never stepped up. From that 12-2 campaign, they have regressed. And when you say Dave Aranda as a defensive coordinator, now you look at the big picture and you go, okay, the team is mediocre. The defense is an elite. And where are you? So, it's going to be an uphill battle. It does all hinge on Lagway, meaning if he's on, he could steal games, obviously, in the Big 12. But to your point, unless they're 9-3, 10-2, or make a magical run, I think they're going to move on from Dave Aranda.
And here's one that I kind of always find interesting. So Shane Beamer, I mean, we saw last year they were everybody's darling with Lenore Sellers.
Yeah.
Sellers returns. We saw them lose a couple close games, and then we saw them just get completely wiped out.
Right.
So what does South Carolina need to do for Beamer to return, or is it pretty much the same Aranda situation?
I just talked to somebody about this yesterday. I did a taping, and they said, outside the usual suspects, who would you say from a value perspective? And one of the teams is Oklahoma, and we can get into that. They're 7-1 to potentially make the college football playoff, but plus 850 with South Carolina. And the reason is 2 years ago, they were 9-4. Right. Yep. They made that magical run towards the end of the regular season. They had lost that game to Ole Miss in their building in Williams-Brice, and then went on a heater at the end of the regular season 2 years ago. They won 6 straight, and they knock off Clemson. And you say, okay, Lenore Sellers is the guy, right? Week 1 last year, they grind out that win in Atlanta, and you're like, okay, all right, we'll take it. And then all of a sudden, Lenore Sellers in that offense just they were non-existent. And then you go, and I bet them against Texas A&M, and they're up 30-3, right? And you're like, oh, this is, at one point I was catching 18 and a half. I started to panic a little bit because how much time is left in this game, right?
Yeah.
They lose it. It's amazing, when you just look at that team. But Shane Beamer, again, is another guy that came on. He was supposed to be new blood. He was supposed to be a young head coach. You get the quarterback. You knock off your arch rival Clemson, right? Clemson's going the other way in the ACC, and you're like, okay, this is a dark horse. Look at the game against Alabama. How do you let that game go? They had Alabama dead to rights, and Jeremy Bernard and that play at the end of the fourth quarter, guys aren't tackling. They let them go right down the field. When Lenore Sellers is on, he could be a Heisman guy, but it hinges on him. They have Dylan Stewart. I interviewed Dylan Stewart out in the Super Bowl last year. He's one of the best edge rushers, right? He potentially has 25-1 odds last time I looked to be a top flight number 1 overall pick. I don't think he'll be there, but they're a team at plus 850 that, do I believe they could be there? I'm not bought in on Shane Beamer, but to your point, if we're looking at not, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, if we're not looking at that core group, you would say which team has a quarterback that could take a game over, and you would buy into potentially Lenore Sellers. So again, he needs to go though 9-3 as well, because 8-4 at South Carolina, is it any different at the end of Lou Holtz and Spurrier where they were? No, right?
No, yeah. And we'll go kind of quick here. So
we could stay another 17. I'm getting into it now. Now you get me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of mentioned Oklahoma. I had this one there because I think it's very interesting. Like, I was never a Brett Venables guy. I mean, I thought he was a good defensive coordinator. I thought that team was a lot of material last year, and you saw when they came across good teams, they blew that game against Alabama. Alabama looked like men amongst boys in the second half there. Was it all material, or like, let's say Venables? People forget. I think they lost 6 SEC games 2 years ago.
Right.
They're probably gonna be on people's radars now. People aren't gonna be sleeping on them. Is Venables on any sort of short leash at all, or is it, hey, he gets a pass for making the college football playoff last year?
Okay, so I think I'm going to answer it in 2 ways. Okay, I'm going to answer it what I believe the fan base believes, and what the potential boosters and backers of Boomer Sooner believe, and then I'm going to give you my take on where I think he is. I think if we're talking boosters, I think he is, like, you would put him like 8 or 9, like it's college football playoff or bust, right?
Right.
Like, I think if you look at just the perception of the program, they would say that. You ask somebody that loves, Oklahoma, they would say he needs to get to 10-2 and knock off Texas and make the college football playoff. I'll say, yes, I agree to that to some capacity, but I'll push back a little and I'll get your take. So, yes, he lost 6 SEC games, but let's break it down a little bit more, okay? They were fighting for their college football playoff lives. Prior to the thumb injury, you could make the argument John Mateer was as good as any quarterback in the country, right? He came back maybe a little too early in the game against Texas. He throws the interceptions, they get blown out, and then they were fighting for their playoff lives. But down the stretch, they go on the road into Knoxville, which is not an easy place on a Saturday night, as a 2.5-point dog, and they grind out that victory. And then 2 weeks later, they're 6.5-point dogs in Tuscaloosa, and they win that game 24-21. Those are 2 critical SEC road wins. And then they also knocked off and dominated Lenora Sellers in South Carolina earlier in the year by double digits, right? They won that game, I think, by 14 points plus.
Yep.
So when you look at that, yes, it was a terrible loss. 17-0 in the first half. They had DeBoer and they had Ty Simpson dead to rights. But if that kid, I think it was Xavier Robinson, catches that ball by Mateer, it could be, he hit him right in the chest, right? That play transformed the whole momentum back to Oklahoma, and they just never recovered. I think Brett Venables, to me, is he elite? No, but I think he's much better than what the perception is of him, that he's just a good coordinator and not a really good head coach. I think he's a very good head coach, but not elite. I wouldn't put him, obviously, with Cignetti now and some of the others.
So, yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because a lot of the ones that I'm suggesting here are mainly on the booster side and the expectations here, because we've seen you could turn a college football program around like that, and given the fact that there's no wiggle room, and they are expanding the playoff, but Oklahoma expects to be there every year, and if he doesn't do it again, they're not going to be patient. That's just kind of where I'm at with that. And I agree with your analysis. He probably shouldn't, but it's 50-50.
Yeah, it's Oklahoma, right? It's go big or go home. It's unfortunate, but that's what it is.
And so the ultimate one, Joe, and you could call me an idiot for this. I've been on this for 2 years. Dabo Swinney, we know he's not getting fired, right? He's going to go out on his own terms. But I remember I've been saying this for 2 years. Like, what does the guy do besides motivate people, right? When he doesn't have better talent than everybody, they don't win. You saw a stat during the Georgia Tech game that said when they're losing at halftime, his record is something like a terrible win percentage, right? It was 15 and whatever it was. They can't out-athlete you. They don't have Trevor Lawrence. They don't have all these first-round draft picks. Is Clemson going to be, hey, thanks for what you've done for us, but it's win now? Like, is there any way that they come to a mutual agreement that this is Dabo's last year if they have another 8-4, 9-3 type season?
I would think I would think it would have to be. And I've taught, I do a show with Coach Bowden, and Coach knows Dabo very well. When Tommy Bowden was let go, obviously Dabo took over the job and never looked back and won 2 national championships. And Coach Bowden, Terry Bowden, when he left Akron, was actually a graduate assistant, analyst for Dabo Swinney the year that they won the national championship with Trevor Lawrence. So we've had this discussion multiple times, Marco, and I'm in agreement with you that, hey, I understand it's Dabo. I understand he's a motivator. But when you look at the numbers per se, and I'll just throw out some numbers that, when you think about how dominant they were, I think it was the period of 2014 to 2024, entering a couple of years ago, they had only lost 4 ACC games. 4 in basically a 10-year period. They had a road winning percentage of almost 830%. So out of every, and some of those obviously that I counted in that with a national championship loss, a playoff loss when they lost to Ohio State, and you look, so those count because I'm a big believer. You lose on a neutral field, it doesn't matter. I count it as a road loss. But so when you look at that and you say they were dominant, like they had only lost 4 ACC games in like 10 years. And then a couple of years ago, and you go back, they lose 4 games in the conference. He can't win on the road anymore. You know,
Yeah.
they're losing games that they shouldn't.
To Syracuse by
yeah. And now you're saying, okay, wait a second. All right, now let's peel it back, right? Let's look at it even deeper. Where are they not? Are they the same team that they were? He didn't take in transfer
Nope.
talent when everybody else is. So you're still trying to put the square peg into the round hole. Now he's come around, but it could be too late before, when everybody has a step on you, right, Marco? You're behind the curve now. You're not ahead of the curve. You're just trying. Why do I want to go to Clemson when for years you weren't taking in transfer talent? Now all of a sudden you're going to turn it on and you're supposed to be embraced. And the quarterback situation has been a significant drop-off. Trevor Lawrence, obviously first-round selection. Deshaun Watson, prior to going to Cleveland, was an outstanding college and NFL quarterback. And then you look at Cade Klubnik. You look at Vizina this year, right?
DJ.
Good quarterbacks, right? Yeah. Look, DJU was terrible, right?
Yeah.
That really started it. They thought they had lightning in a bottle with him, and he was turnover prone. They never elevated it. And the numbers suggest, when you look at Clemson back in the day when they had Gallman, when they had ETN at running back, they were averaging 240 rushing yards per game. They couldn't even get up to like 200 now. They're maybe 180, 190, but they're significantly lower when they had Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott as OCs, co-coordinators. They can't run the football consistently anymore or as dominant as they did. They can't stop the run. When they had Venables, you look at the numbers, they averaged 47 sacks per year as a unit under Venables. They had Vic Beasley. They had obviously Farrell and all those, Grady Jarrett. You go through the list of guys that they had, Christian Wilkins. They don't have that dominant talent anymore. And so, okay, the offense is mediocre or, let's say slightly above average. The defense isn't dominant. Where are you going with that? Right? What does that translate to? That translates to me in a great year, maybe 9-3. But is that good enough for Dabo Swinney to keep his job? I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly what you said. And I think they're fortunate that they had those problems and they were in the ACC 2 years ago. And you went in and SMU kind of choked in the ACC championship game. I mean, it was a turnover fest in there.
Right.
So that's a little bit masked where he still has that to stand on. And, people can be whatever they're into, Joe, and this isn't me.
Right.
No slight to anyone being religious, but when you come out and just the tone deafness to say our name, image, and likeness that we care about is the name, image, and likeness of God, I think you wrote your ticket right there, to be perfectly honest with you, because we see how corrupt college football is, and they're not going to care about that, right? They care about winning. They care about winning football games, and it's like you got to kind of adapt, and he hasn't been able to do that. And
not at all.
So we'll talk a little on the newer coaching hires here. Go over some, and I want to give a couple over-unders here because I'm very, very smitten on this team because I believe when you come with a good coach and a good quarterback, Oklahoma State, their win total is 5.5 right now. It's juiced to -170. These are FanDuel numbers on the over. I mean, my boy Menstermacher coming in, slinging it all over the yard, taking over from Mike Gundy, who was a legend there. We know they're in a tough conference, very Texas Tech heavy, but a lot of good teams there. Is that a good number for Oklahoma State? Do you think just bringing in Menstermacher and the new coach can make them relevant?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Morris put up, at North Texas with Menstermacher, put up huge numbers, in North Texas. And, I bet him, I never forget when he came on, he played the bowl game and his number in that bowl game was 210, 220. And I had altered it to 300, and that was the game. It was a big win for me. But he threw for 400 in that bowl game. And then he just never looked back, right? Now, yes, I think this offense could cook. But I think, and hear me out, it has the potential because of the defensive side of the ball and how bad they were. Right now, I'm not suggesting that Morris and the staff can't elevate, but and you look at the team as a whole, right? It could be similar to what Arkansas was last year. A great offense, a terrible defense, and if their defense was in the top 75, they might be a 500 team, and that's what it might look like. It might be year 2 to potentially get over those 5.5 wins. I don't know. I'm a little hesitant just because, and I know it's juiced to the over, but that's the number where it was with Gundy, right? So think about this. And the reason why Gundy and not a lot of people, I don't believe, bring it up, it's not just Gundy, but when Jim Knowles moved on to Ohio State, nobody seemed to bring that up as a major reason why, Oklahoma State failed. And they had Ollie Gordon and they had Alan Bowman and they had, wide receiver talent, but that defense was terrible. They were atrocious. And it was a slow erosion when they had that team that made the Big 12 championship game and they beat Notre Dame in the bowl game, right? And you look at just third down statistics, they had one of the best in the country at 28% that year. That's why they were so good. If they won that game, the Big 12, they're in the college football playoff. You can make that argument. But they slowly lost talent, Marco, defensively, forget offensively. And so I'm a little concerned. I think it's a good number, but it's the Big 12 and their defense to me with a first year. Now they might shock everybody, but I would be hesitant at the 5.5. I would much rather see like, hey, how does the first month of the season go? Could I get a cheap number the rest of the way? And could I jump in on an abbreviated number? Maybe 4.5, right? If I can get that, maybe if they lose in the month of September, I would take that shot. But that doesn't mean from a gambling perspective, you can't back them with the quarterback play and with the new implementation of offense. So I think he's a good coach. I just am a little concerned defensively. There's so much lack of depth there that I am concerned about the 5.5. I would be a no play for me, but I understand why you like it.
Well, I love your thought process there because they're going to be a team that no one's going to want to play later in the season. I don't know how top heavy their schedule is, but if they come out of the gate struggling, then that defense starts to find itself.
Right.
Imagine going in the Stillwater when it's rocking in there and you got to deal with that offense.
Absolutely.
So they could be spoilers. So I like the kind of live in play number that you're talking about there. Another good coaching hire that I love, and I love all these coaching hires, but I think Bob Chesney outside of Franklin might be the best hire that there is. And he comes attached with now Nico in year 2 in that UCLA, we saw them kind of knock Penn State out. And we saw what they could do with competent coaching. So what about Chesney and UCLA? Now we know obviously they're not going to probably have as big of a commitment as Oklahoma State, where no one goes to those games. Their numbers at 6.5, pretty even both ways. Like, do we see 7 wins on their schedule, or do we see a little bit less in year 1?
Well, I think Chesney's a great coach, and he's similar, obviously, in the same mold as Cignetti, right? Physicality, that's what you want to see, discipline, fundamentals, you win the turnover battle, and you could run the football, right? And that is what I want to see out of UCLA. Now, Nico did shock at, in that 3-game stretch. You're like, hey, where was that when he was at Tennessee? And you're like, okay, Neuheisel really got the most out of him in that type of situation. Do I believe in Nico big picture? No, but I believe in Chesney enough. Now, 6.5, I have to look at this schedule quickly. Let me just see where they're at, because the schedule means everything in college football. And when you look at it, Cal, not going to be easy. San Diego State, winnable. Purdue, they could win. Maryland on the road, I don't know.
They'll win that one with Loxley. Trust me, as a Maryland fan, they'll win that one.
I know Loxley. The games that Loxley wins: Michigan State, Minnesota, Nevada. Yeah, you know what? I think they could get to 6. I would still probably take the under, because Nico to me is a little bit, suspect. But to your point, I mean, San Diego State, winnable, Maryland winnable, Wisconsin in your house. With Fickle in that situation and how bad they are, there's 3 wins potentially right there. Nevada, right? 5, you would say. Illinois, Michigan are going to be tough, but then Minnesota, the only question is it's in November and it could be like 20 degrees in Minneapolis, right? So we'll see. But I would say Chesney, to me, if I had to bet it right now, again, I would probably take the under, but I do believe Chesney is the right guy.
Another one of my favorites here is Pat Fitzgerald. Obviously thought he got a raw deal. Great to see him back in there. And then he's inheriting an absolute dumpster fire in there. Obviously a team that went in and did beat Maryland, but Michigan State. So that number is coming in at pretty much where I thought it would be, 3.5, but very, 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 very juiced to the over in. It's -180 on FanDuel. 4 wins is still kind of tough depending on the schedule. I mean, can Fitzgerald make that big of an impact? I mean, we saw what he did at Northwestern with less talent, less resources.
Yep.
or will it take a couple of years for him to get to the 7-8 win mark?
I think just having Fitzgerald there potentially can make 4 wins. Jonathan Smith was supposed to be that guy, and then you find out and you hear the reports about how he left his team high and dry in Corvallis and how he was checked out before he even got there. And you're like, why did the guy even take the job? Right? I would rather be in Oregon State with basically no conference right there with Wazoo, then go to Michigan State, sell these kids on $1 and a dream, and then be checked out. The reports were ridiculous. I'm with you. I thought Fitzgerald got a raw deal at Northwestern. Again, to be back in the Big Ten, I think he's rejuvenated. I think he's that good of a head coach. And more importantly, physicality. That's what we knew for that team dating back to D'Antonio, right? They were a physical group. They can run the football and play disciplined defense. I like the over. I think it's there for a reason. I would take a shot on even maybe alternate to 5 or 6 wins.
And I think we'll both be on the over here, but I mean, I just think James Franklin alone, what he's getting you, Virginia Tech 6.5 over, book it, right? Like not much discussion.
Don't take him against Clemson or anybody of importance, right? Top 25 teams. But yes, I agree with you. And the fact that he brought back his former DC at Penn State, Brent Key, which is pretty important, right? Because Key was the coach. They get rid of him. They bring in Franklin. And now he goes back to the defensive side of the ball. I think that's important as well to keep. They kept some talent there. All the talent didn't just obviously transfer out. And then now he has a pulse. I think when you look at just that team as a whole and going from Fuentes, then to Brent Key and knowing the mediocrity that they have, that's a perfect fit for James Franklin. They just got a booster, I believe, to influx, $75 million into NIL and facilities. That's going to matter. And Franklin, listen, is he going to win a national championship at Virginia Tech? Most likely not, probably 99% to the no, but they will be back to maybe respectability to where Frank Beamer had them competing for a championship, conference championship, and potentially maybe being a dark horse in years to come for the college football playoff.
Yeah, Joe, I say this all the time. I mean, I'm 42, so I remember the days of Nebraska, Virginia Tech, Michigan prior to Harbaugh.
Right.
Those programs, kids don't care about that anymore. They're not coming there based on name. So Franklin gets you back to where you're a 9-2, 9-3, 10-2. That might be as good as you should be as a program at Virginia Tech. I great fan base. I like them, but
Yeah, but that's the problem, Marco. And this is where we're at with college athletics is for Boston College. Is Boston College, even in their heyday with Flutie and Matt Ryan, they never won a national championship. And I'm not picking on BC, but my point is these fan bases need to have realistic expectations. But then the pushback is Kurt Cignetti in Indiana. If I told you Cignetti comes in 2 years, in year 1, he makes the college football playoff. In year 2, he goes undefeated, Cinderella, and wins a national championship and has a number 1 quarterback as the overall draft pick in the NFL draft, would you have believed it? You would have bet 10,000, 100,000 to the no. Right. So that's where we're at. So the Colorados, to your point, the Baylors, the Arizona, all these schools, and I'm not picking on them, but we know in their respective conferences and where they're at, they've never won a national championship. So expecting now, a team like Minnesota, to when they had the heyday of Ricky Foggy and Brian Caputo, and they had, Morency and all those running backs, come on, Maroney, excuse me. Yeah. My point is that's where we're at in college athletics. So I agree with you. Virginia Tech should be happy to get to 9-3, beat Virginia when you play them, and just call it a day. And James Franklin will be able to do that.
Absolutely. I think it's a perfect fit for him with the expectations. Like you said, it's not Penn State, so he can go in there and do his thing. So maybe give me one team that you think is a regression candidate that you might take their under for, and one team that you maybe an over that you love the most of any team. I do think one that I think goes way under is Arkansas, because I'm not a big Ryan Silverfield guy, and Colorado as well. But any one that you like maybe besides those two?
Yeah, I mean, again, we'll see what Silverfield does. I was a big backer of his at Memphis. I thought he did a fantastic job. I like KJ Jackson, the quarterback. Braylon Allen comes back. Now, is he like Mike Washington? No, I look, Mike Washington to me is going to be a dynamic stud with the Las Vegas Raiders. But I understand it could be like a Chad Morris situation, right? When they moved on from Bielema, Chad Morris was supposed to be the savior in Arkansas, and it never panned out. So we'll see what happens with Ryan Silverfield. Again, they lack defensive talent across the board, so their schedule is very difficult. Could be a dead under. But I'm going to go, and I'm going to go for Kalen DeBoer, and I'll stick in the SEC. But Kalen DeBoer, to me, how they gave him the extension for $87 million is absolutely pathetic and ridiculous. I mean, it's go big or go home in Alabama. They had one of the worst rushing offenses in Alabama history dating back to pre-Nick Saban, where they averaged only 3.5 yards per carry. They didn't have the physicality on the defensive side of the ball. They weren't as opportunistic as they were, and I understand in certain games they were, but they didn't consistently win the turnover battle. I didn't think Ty Simpson was a legitimate first-round draft pick. Yeah, for the first 6 games of the regular season, but then you go back to the back end, Marco, and they underperformed. They got abused in that game by Indiana, and that's the way Alabama used to play. And they look like a former Pac-12 team now. And you want to tack an 8.5. I know Kalen DeBoer's got to get there with Austin Mack and all the talent that they supposedly have, but I haven't seen him coach and step up yet. There were multiple games where, forget the Florida State game, could have lost the South Carolina game, right? You could have lost a playoff game. You could have lost a number of different games last year. Should have lost maybe the Auburn game if the kid doesn't throw the interception on the 30, you know? And so I do not believe Kalen DeBoer is this elite head coach. I think he's a very good head coach. I don't think he deserves to be in Alabama. Time will tell if he's still there. But to lose back-to-back seasons where you lose 4 games, that's unheard of in Tuscaloosa. So I'm going to sell the 8.5. I'll keep it in the SEC. I like Auburn. I like Golish. I think he's a blue-collar guy. I don't believe that Hugh Freeze or Brian Harsin were the answer. Just from a physicality perspective, from a motivation perspective, they weren't, tough guys per se. I think Alex Golish, coming from New York, is a blue-collar guy, and that translates on the plains. They might not have all the flashiness, but Byron Brown was one of the most productive quarterbacks in FBS last year. They're going to run the football. They have Jeremiah Cobb. Defensively, they kept DJ Durkin. Look at the schedule. I don't believe they can't get to potentially 8 wins. Now, it's not a 10-2 season, but 8 wins is a significant upgrade from where they were. You knock off an Alabama or you knock off another LSU across the landscape next year, or this year. That's what it takes. I'm all in on Alex Golish. I just believe he's a motivator. He's an X's and O's guy, but he also preaches physicality, and that's something that Hugh Freeze certainly didn't have. And I'll just leave you on this. The lack of success with Hugh Freeze, it's amazing to me, and I've talked about this to multiple people at Auburn, how you could have Malik Willis, you could recruit Caden Salter, an RPO type of guy. You get the job for 3 years in Auburn, and you decide to run out Robbie Ashford to South Carolina, and then Ashford went to Wake Forest. You take Peyton Thorne, that really wasn't an elite, mobile, athletic guy, and you make him your quarterback for 2 years. That's why Hugh Freeze doesn't have a job, right? I mean, and then he recruits Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma. Kid was a deer in the headlights. He didn't step up in big games at Oklahoma. And that's what he attached his card to. And it's unfortunate. You can't lose games in Auburn 10-3 to Kentucky. You can't lose in your house. And I understand that, Missouri and that team, Drinkwitz, are good. But you can't lose that game in overtime in your building. Those are 2 games. The offense should have been able to bail out the defense, and they couldn't do it. Pathetic. But we'll see. I'll take over Auburn, under Alabama this year.
What is the Auburn number? Is it like 6.5 around there?
6.5. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
6.5. I think they can get to 7-8 wins. Their schedule, to me, lines up. They could potentially, I believe they have a game, and I have to look at their schedule. I think they have a game against Tennessee week number 6, they could potentially be 4-1 or undefeated heading into that game. Now, a lot of things have to break their way. I get that, but I think their defense will be there this year.
So we could be sitting with an Iron Bowl that hits both your over for Auburn and your under
True.
for
Yeah.
Alabama there.
Yeah.
I don't know where that game's going to be this year. I think they were at the Plains last year.
Yeah,
right?
they were. It'll be in Tuscaloosa.
Okay. Yep.
So
okay, so cool. So yeah, we'll kind of, I guess, wrap it up here with a little college football playoffs. I mean, we saw multiple teams change, and I believe it was 5 or 6 new teams last year that weren't in there the year before. We saw the top 3, like the 1, 2, 3 preseason, all out: Penn State, LSU, Clemson, all out of there. It seems like it's Notre Dame is a given, Oregon's a given, Ohio State's a given. Is there any team maybe in the top 5 that should be careful? I mean, with people coming in, or is it kind of, hey, the top 5 are the top 5, and then it's going to be everybody else filling in the rest?
Well, I mean, when I'm just going to look at the odds, Texas to me, I understand Texas, right? I get it. But again, you look at Arch Manning and you look at the body of work and you look at Sarkisian and you look at the Ohio State game, road game, didn't step up, right? Road game, 2.5-point favorite. They bet it down from 7.5, 8.5 against Florida, lose the game outright, right? Road game. It didn't perform well against Georgia, road game. Where is the marquee road win for Arch Manning in his career? Are we gonna hang our hat on the Michigan game?
I had Kentucky money line, and he pulled that one out. So,
right. I mean, right, but they pull it out in overtime, right? I'm just saying, where is I don't see it. So yes, great win against Texas A&M at the end of the year. That was an A&M team, I think, at that particular time that, when you're rolling with the top record in the SEC, you sort of punch yourself out at the end of the regular season. I think Texas, until they show me that they could beat one of the elite teams, and maybe it is when they come to Austin, Ohio State, we'll see. But I can't buy into Texas. The one team out of all of them that I would be all in just preseason is Georgia. And again, I just think when obviously Cignetti has done it as good as Saban over, the previous 15 years. In 2 years, he's dominated. We'll see if he keeps that train in motion. But Kirby, to me, is still one of the best in-game and just preparation coaches that we've seen. He recruits offensive line, defensive line. They have Nate Frazier coming back, Gunnar Stockton, one of the better quarterbacks. But their plus money price from just a preseason perspective is the only team that I could, out of the top 5, those teams, Oregon, Texas, that I'd be willing to put money on because I believe they're going to be there, right? I can't buy into Alabama, LSU, and all these teams. To me, it's Georgia because I just believe in Kirby and I believe in the program being that train in motion that you say, hey, you know what? They're worth plus money no matter where they are at the start of the year.
Death taxes and Kirby smart. I mean, that's a good way to view it there. I was I don't know what to make of Oregon because last year I said, hey, you're losing Dylan Gabriel.
Right.
You have no idea how Dixon's going to be. All the signs point to maybe they're kind of regressing, and then Oregon comes out and does what they do. They finally won that playoff game to kind of get them over the hump there. This should be the logical next step to get them in there. But we've seen, to your point, Dan Lanning lost both of the games that he's played against Kalen DeBoer when he was at Washington. Where's his big win? Is Oregon a team that could be a little bit fraudulent? I mean, I don't know how their schedule is, but when they get in the playoff and they're playing good teams, is that a team that you would put your money on?
In a one-game scenario, yes. Again, I'm not bought into Dante Moore, and maybe I'm a little bit of a deer in the headlights, but I've watched him at UCLA, and I watched the struggles, and I watched the fact that he was turnover prone. And you watched the Texas Tech game, and the defense stepped up and really shut down Baron Morton. And you say, okay, Dante Moore played well, good. He didn't play elite. And if my money happens to be on a quarterback, which one would I buy into? I'm not buying into Dante Moore, and that's just me right now. Again, I would let's talk just quarterbacks outside the top. Would you buy into Gunnar Stockton? Yeah, I would take a shot, right? Would you buy into Trinidad Chambliss? Yeah,
love Trinidad.
Right.
Yeah.
I would buy into. It's crazy. I know he hasn't played for this team, but I would buy into Darian Mensah. Why? Because Guywin's an ACC championship. Hey, I'm willing to bank on guys that have stepped up from a quarterback perspective in big games. Even though they switch teams, guys that haven't stepped up and haven't won road games and haven't won a college playoff game in a tough environment, I'm not so sure about. And so I think that's when we look at preseason odds and you say, okay, here's plus money across the board. Which quarterback or which team or organization could I say, hey, they're worth the bang for the buck? And there's only a certain amount, I think, when you really break it down. Maybe CJ Carr, but we haven't seen it yet, right? They run off 10 straight games. They don't make the college football playoff, rightfully so. I don't think they were deserving. I think it should have went to Miami with the head-to-head, but we'll see what year 2 with CJ Carr is. He might be that guy.
I was sitting there at the bar getting ready to watch the Ravens game, and I had Miami at plus 500 to make the college football playoff. And when that news came out, I was like, thank God, because they rightfully should have been in as well, too. I mean, head-to-head, you have to value.
Why do head-to-head, Marco, right? Why do head-to-head if it doesn't matter? I mean, the college football playoff committee is a joke, especially they have become like a reality show, unfortunately, right? And so the stuff and the information that they punch out each and every week is to grab and bring in viewership, right? So like when they say, well, head-to-head doesn't matter in week 13, but then the final thing, head-to-head matters, where did that come from, right?
Right.
So the only way you're going to fix it is, hey, do like the college basketball. Top 10 win, it's 5 points. Top 25 win is 3 points. No top 25 win, then all of a sudden it's -2. Do a point system, and then they don't have to guess. Then we know, but they won't do that because of the gambling perspective. Books won't want that, right? The books will, because then you'll have a clear indication of who's going to make it and who won't, and the books will never agree for that.
Well, we'll have, and for those of you watching and listening out there, don't go to a wedding, don't go to your kids' soccer games. Be in front of the TV for LSU Ole Miss and the rematch of Notre Dame Miami, because those will be epic cinema gold, and that is what the college football playoff, to all their flaws, is giving us this year, a rematch of that game. And it could be Notre Dame's only loss, it could be Miami's only loss. It is going to be amazing, amazing college football. Joe, I appreciate you giving me some extra time here, man. Let everybody know where they can follow you. And do you have any updates on possibly your next venture or your next steps or anything like that?
So they can follow me on Twitter at Go for the Two. I'm going to start in the month of June, later in the year, in the month, putting up podcasts. I'll still do a weekly, during the football season, weekly show with former National Coach of the Year, Terry Bowden, working on some other projects as well. But Coach Bowden and I, we talk about all the top 25 battles. We get into a group of 5. Hopefully this year we'll take phone-ins and callers. So we have a lot on the horizon, and still do the show with my former co-host, Mike Carver, during football season. So we'll be on in August straight through February for obviously NFL and college football action. And
more importantly, you'll have to come back on here at some point.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk a little NFL.
Really enjoyed it, Marco. Anytime.
Appreciate it. Awesome, Joe. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
See ya.